What's good, y'all? We're continuing the One Piece arc reviews throughout the series. And next up, we have another short one, but it's pretty touching, and Reverse Mountain. And this takes place in the chapters 101 to 106. So, like I said, this chapter is really short, or this arc's very short because it's really just covering the Straw Hat's entrance to the Grand Line, you know. So we're out at sea, about to head into the Grand Line and whatnot, and we're following Buggy's like his map of how to get to the Grand Line. And obviously there's some like skepticism. So like it's from Buggy, so we don't know if it's like, 100% legit because Buggy's a clown, you know what I'm saying? But so it's saying that we need to go through the red line. And as we know, as we've learned, the red line is this giant, huge rock landmass that's dividing the sea. And it's just like it's saying that you need to go through it. So obviously the crew is a little shaken up about this at first, not understanding like what the fuck, how we gonna go over a mountain, But then start people thinking like, oh, it must be a canal, it must be like a little small entranceway that you go through. So we find that out, but beforehand we start to drift off. We're in the middle of a storm, obviously, because last chapter they were in a storm. That's how they got out of Log Town and whatnot. They were in the middle of a storm, and suddenly the storm just disappeared. And that's when we found out that we were in this thing called the Calm Belt, which is the water that's kind of like south of the red line. It's kind of weird to explain. So basically, there's a Calm Belt in between. Like there's a Calm Belt, Grand Line, Calm Belt. And so that basically stops people from going taking a route around the red line. Because obviously that's what Zoro proposed. Well, I want to just go south, to avoid having to try and figure out how to go up a mountain. But then we find out that it's the Calm Belt is the reason why. And the Calm Belt has no weather. So no weather means no wind. No wind means the ship can't sail. And that wouldn't be that big of an issue if it was just that, because obviously you could just row through it. The big issue is the sea beasts that live there. And we get a double page spread of freaking huge sea beasts, like bigger than we've ever seen before. That it has Luffy and Zoro and all of them scared. And if they're scared of it, it's something we should be scared of as well. So it looks like one of them sneezes. One of the sea beasts sneezes that has the ship on top of it, because you can see the ship on top of the thing, and it looks like a little ant on top of on top of the beast. He like sneezes or something, and they're thrown back into the storm. So luckily they survive, obviously, and then that's when they find out the entranceway, the canal, basically, to get in. So they rush. They get there. It's a little bit of an issue. Luffy has to jump in between the canal like edges and the ship to make sure it doesn't crash into the red line. And as they're coming down and heading into the Grand Line, they see this huge whale blocking the way. And what does Luffy do? Luffy's just like, hey, get out of my way, and attacks it. And everybody else is just freaking out and whatnot. And eventually the whale eats the ship. Yes. The story's over. This was 106 was the end of the story. Thanks for watching. No. But it eats the ship. But Luffy is on top of the whale somehow. And he's beating at the whale, saying, hey, cough up my ship, blah, blah, blah. And the whale's about to go submerge back underwater. And then Luffy sees there's a hatchet, like to open the hatchet to go in the whale. So he jumps in that, and we find out that there's like a whole it's basically like a ship around. I don't know. It's like a submarine, basically. It's built like a submarine in there, and it's massive. And then we cut over to the ship, and we find out the ship is basically inside of the whale's stomach that looks like it's a mini ocean inside. And there's a guy named Crocus on an island and has his own house. He's just chilling in there. It's really weird. So, and we find out obviously the water is not actually water. It's like his stomach acid and whatnot. So everybody's panicking to hurry up and get the ship out of there so it doesn't melt. So we get long story short, we get the background as to who this whale is. His name is Laboon, and about 50 years ago he came to the red line with some pirates, and the pirates couldn't take Laboon with them, so he told them, hey, stay here, we'll be back. And Laboon trusted him and been sitting there for about 50 years now. He's just been sitting there crying out, and he's mad because he can't go home because the red line's blocking his way, and he also thinks the red line is what's keeping his friends from coming back to him. So every day he just like rams into the red line over and over and over and over again, and he's got super big red marks all over the top of his head, and it's really sad because he's like crying out, wishing that his friends would come back and whatnot. And Crocus is there because Crocus is a doctor, and he ends up every time Laboon goes into this big rampage, he sedates him and to get him to calm down so he stops hurting himself and whatnot. And he's also in charge of taking care of Laboon because the pirates asked, could you watch Laboon until we come back? So it's a real sad story and whatnot. And in the midst of all this, we meet that there's other people inside of the stomach that were trying to basically kill Laboon to get the whale meat, obviously because it's like they're just hunting for it. And it's this Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine. That's their names. They act like they're antagonists and whatnot. They're kind of just like a comic relief right now in this arc. So, the crew takes care of them. Just as like a quick little one-hitter quitter, boom, knocked out. Going about your business, boom, boom. And towards the end of the arc, when they finally get out the ship, get out of Laboon's stomach, which has just a fucking giant door to his stomach to get out. Turns out Crocus built all of the stuff inside of him. So he's a doctor and like somewhat of a scientist, I guess. I don't know. Guess like being a good doctor, you could perform human surgery, anatomy, whale biology. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But regardless, he pretty much just lets him out, and they're talking and talking. And as Luffy hears all this story and whatnot, what Luffy does is he breaks apart of the ship, sees that Laboon has a open wound on the top of his head, runs up the well. This well is at least, like, when it's standing up, it's at least 100 feet. I don't know. It's like it's super tall. Obviously, it's hard to tell because in manga, but Luffy's an ant. Like I said, the ship was an ant to the sea beast. This well isn't as big as those sea beasts, but it's pretty close. And Luffy climbs all the way up to the top and slams the mast right inside the hole, and causes the whale to freak out because he's in pain. Luffy punches the whale in the eye, and everybody's like, "What the fuck is Luffy doing? He's beating up on a whale." And then he had the whale fight back, and he was like, "I ain't gonna give up," blah blah blah. And he hits the whale back after the whale hit him, and eventually the whale hits him. He flies into a wall, and he was like, and then Luffy's like, "We're tied," and he said, I want you to stay here. He said, "I'm gonna come back for my rematch, and I'll be sure to win. I'll get stronger and blah blah blah." And basically, Luffy just made a promise to come back to Laboon because if these other people didn't keep their promise with him, he's gonna keep his promise with them because Luffy's like obviously big about his word and stuff like that. So he's gonna care about that stuff. So that was pretty heartfelt. And at the end, as they're leaving, Luffy painted his Straw Hat symbol on the front of Laboon. It's horribly fucking painted because Luffy painted it. So it was pretty bad. And during all this, we also find out that the Grand Line, the way navigation works is a lot different. So it doesn't work just off just maps and you just sail with the wind and water and stuff like that. No, it sails based. Your navigation is this thing called the log post, which basically is just a watch. But it's not a watch. It has like a globe over it with like a compass that goes around. But the thing we find out is that this compass operates on magnetic fields. That's what each island is set up as, magnetic fields. And from the start of the Grand Line, there's 7 different paths you can take. But once you start on that path, you cannot divulge from that path. And when you get to the last island, which is Raftail, that's supposedly where the One Piece is. And hey, that's what Luffy wants to do. So we didn't know what we were gonna do as far as like what like it doesn't specify like what each route is, and like it doesn't break down like our choices and whatnot. What basically decides our choice is this Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine, who we originally got the first log post from. Luffy ended up breaking that shit on accident. It was Luffy or Nami broke it on accident, and Crocus was like, "Don't worry, you can have mine," and for helping Laboon and whatnot. And Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine begged them to take them to their island, their home, Whiskey Peak. So that was the path they set out on. And that's where we end at on this arc. So next we're gonna be covering probably gonna be I might do 2 arcs into one on the next one. I don't know, because so we're into what you want to call as a saga. So if you look at it in terms of the East Blue, which is everything before Logtown. So obviously the beginning all the way into Arlong Park, people consider that the East Blue saga. Some people might throw in Logtown, but I'll just say Arlong Park is the end of East Blue saga. And then we're coming up onto another saga, which is called the Alabasta saga. So I think I'm just gonna stick to the route of going island by island, because I feel like that's more fitting and whatnot. But like always, please hit that subscribe button. Please comment, tell me what you thought about this video, and if you're watching or reading the arcs as well. And yeah, catch y'all later. Peace.